Okay. The moment finds my voice, and my voice finds the moment. Hello, everyone. The inspiration for another episode has come. And in this episode, I am more like a wandering explorer of what the ideas of the title could imply. Okay. Pretty much this episode, I am commenting, or the intention is to kind of explain something I've noticed about my own mind. Due to me being a human being, it could be common for others as well. When inner realm events, and I'm using the notepad for this episode. Anyways, people can look at the screen. When inner realm events feel like otherworldly lives. Now there needs to be an explanation of what I mean by the inner realms, what I mean by an inner realm event, and what could otherworldly lives be. Human beings, this is something that various scholars have spoken about, but really what it is that our mind is used to create a model and give structure to reality. Every person, before they do anything, there's a sort of model, there's a geometry behind their eyes where their life force is fulfilling in front of their eyes. Now, the way I've come to approach it, and I wasn't always like this is what I'm explaining to the viewers now. It may be simple hearing it, but experientially it took me a while to catch on to it. We are conditioned, we are told that the major focus of life is the outer realms. It's as if we are physical pieces in a chess game, and when it comes to moving the chess pieces, or how the chess pieces are being moved on the chessboard, the chess pieces are claiming they are moving themselves. Now, this could be true and it could be false, but in reality, I find that the human being's life is divided between an inner realm and an outer realm. Commonly, we say the inner realm is the mind, but what is the mind? It's in some sense vague, but it is the source of our life, or of our conscious life. I have suggested it that the inner realms is what you see or you have access to behind your eyes. So whoever you're listening to me right now, if you close your eyes and you see something, that's happening in your inner realms. If your eyes are open in front of it, we have the outer realms. So this is crucial to remember. Now, something very fascinating, and I would say I had a dream. Just like a regular dream. This dream I had an emotion and I was experiencing a sense of my own self that was very different than who I am now. Like right now in the conscious waking state, I have a familiarity with how I'm existing or who I was yesterday, but in the dream state, I noticed a different force, and it became very interesting to me. Just like you put a different lens and light moves differently through that lens. Similarly, it was as if for a moment, it's like right now in the conscious waking state, there's this current lens that my sight is, let's say, light is entering my eyes in this way, but in that dream I had, it was very different. It was as if like the light was moving through a different lens. And if a person's wondering, okay, what could lens for the body is like an actual lens. So think of it like a magnifying glass, That's the type of lenses we find in the outer realms. Now, when it comes to the inner realm, what could be a lens for the mind? That's the question we come to. Now, considering that a human being, let's say there is light, okay, and then we have the lens, and so the light is going through the lens. Now, for the mind, a lens would be the concept of an archetype, but not the complete definition of an archetype that Carl Jung uses. More what I'm trying to say is that the idea of ourself is a lens for our life force. Hopefully this is audible. It better be audible. So, what I'm trying to say is that our psychology is a lens for the force that moves our mind. Light, we have the lens, we have life force going through the shape of the mind. Shape of the body is obvious, shape of the mind is way more interesting in the sense that a person's attitude, behavior can change. It's like a creature in an environment, and the environment is kind of recycling through the individual. That means it's like a person's beliefs on reality are kind of like recycled and, remodified sensory perception. But how should I say it? Here, let me open it up through questions. Why does the mind behave differently in different states? And somebody, looking at the screen right now, you might look at my handwriting and be like, Mr. Within, are you a doctor? No. It's just, how frozen fingers move, in the cold winds of Etobicoke, Canada. So why does the mind behave differently in different states? Let's say that's one question to open up this idea. And the second question would be, what are the states that the mind behaves in? Hopefully, the ancient yogis answered the second question, and they were pretty much like, okay, you're considering yourself to be a human being. Great. The human being goes through, how would I draw it, 3 states. So we have a conscious waking state. Right now, this podcast is being shared from at least my conscious waking state. Then we have deep sleep. And nobody has a problem with deep sleep because there's no sense of self to have a problem. And then we have dream states, okay? And so really what the human life is it is a journey through these states. Nobody can deny this. It's just something we all experience. This whole time we have been identifying with just a physical entity, not realizing the experience for the mind is like it occurs into 3 rooms. In deep sleep, we can say fully unconscious. In the conscious waking state, we say fully conscious. And when it comes to dream states, I would say semi-unconscious, semi-conscious. I've had dreams where the dream's been moving as if it's automated from beforehand, and I've had dreams where I had to move in it in order for the dream to change. Some viewers may be interested in lucid dreaming, but I'll keep that for another episode. But I have had experiences where my body is asleep, my mind is awake, and what my mind can do when it's awake before the body is in some sense, it's like it has the freedom of poetically a different world. So anyways, we have the human being, there's the conscious waking state, deep sleep state, and dream states. Now, who are we in the conscious waking state? There's a sort of physical identity. I'll call it CWS, conscious waking state. In the conscious waking state, it's the environment simulates self. Let me see, there should be a better way of me explaining this. Let's say there's a mystery to reality, and we are like, okay, how is life happening? And then it goes to, okay, it's like happening due to a power, due to a present power. Now we ask ourselves, okay, so there's a present power of the body. So the body has a sort of force that it is working in accordance to. And then it comes, okay, there's a mind that's moving the body. So it's as if the body has a power to move itself, or to move itself in a way where it gets more power or less power. And if someone's just, in a straightforward manner, they're like, okay, what if my mind is some sort of force in this realm? What is the power of my mind? So the power of the mind is the way it is expressing itself. In the conscious waking state, the power of the mind is physically conditional. In dream states, it's unconditional. I shouldn't say unconditional, but it can be unconditional. And let me tell you something I experienced years ago in a dream state, okay? I pretty much woke up one morning, and the way I woke up was so bizarre that it completely changed my perception of what dreams are. We have this view, we close our eyes and we open our eyes inside a dream, right? The body is existing, but while we're experiencing the dream, we don't notice at least our bodies in the bed. So in some sense, we take the dream seriously. The experience I had was I had a dream. In the dream, there was I would say it was like close to a nightmare, but it wasn't like a nightmare. It was just this uncomfortable dream. And in the dream, like my dream automates and I start automatically moving backwards. So imagine you're in a dream, something's happening in front of you, and you start in the dream automatically as if you're on some sort of escalator or something, those horizontal escalators, and you're kind of like just moving backwards automatically. And what ended up happening was that before what happened in the dream could happen to me, as I was slowly moving back, it was as if from the dream I stepped out into my bed where I was in my, like I was, my consciousness was in my bed, and I could notice the dream happen. And so this is, let's say for now, I'll say it as a theory, but I have this view that really what dreams are very advanced simulations. They are very advanced simulations in the moment. That means a person can be in a dream. Let's say you're in a dream and you're falling from somewhere. You can simultaneously be aware that you are in your bed while you're falling in that dream. So the dream continues as a projection, but the awareness is also rooted in the existential reality, existential projection. So what I'm trying to say is pretty much I stepped out of my dream before the dream ended. I saw the dream happen as I was in my bed, awake in the morning. The mind is fascinating because it's on some level, it doesn't have just an ability to project what else the world could be. It has an ability to, where was I going with this? To, in some sense, it's like the past is not lost if the mind can remember it. Our minds are like a parallel life, okay? I think that's a good way to say it, People are like, man, I don't know if I have a soul, but I'm pretty sure I have a mind. And the relationship the body has with the mind is equivalent to the relationship the soul, the mind has with the soul, right? And people are going to be like, Mr. Within, what do you mean by soul? Soul is where the movement of the moment that is conscious happens from. I don't know how to say it. It's as if, like, even right now as I'm speaking, if I treat this moment as a dream, the one that is dreaming the dream is like the reality of the dream. In Vedic thought, these were the three states, and they spoke about a fourth state, which was called Turiya. And Turiya was as if you are not defined by what you find in your conscious waking state. You're not even defined by the deep sleep state. You're not defined by your dream states, as if the mind is behaving in a way where there's something more than it. Let's say there's a person, and this person's just gone for a walk in the park. In front of their eyes, they see a park, and imagine as they've gone for a walk in the park, suddenly in their mind, they envision, like, I don't know, let's say, they envision, I don't know, a hover car passing by. You're sitting on a park bench, and imagine you notice a shadow above you, and you see there's a hover car above you. What I'm trying to say is the mind gives access to a different version of reality. Like, look at how fascinating the mind is. Right now, I'm looking at this Tim Hortons coffee cup in front of me, and I'm like, okay, I'm just looking at it being there on my table, and simultaneously in my mind, I could visualize drinking it, I could visualize throwing it away. It's as if, what is the mind doing present with accurately displaying the sensory perception. It's as if the mind is here to do something with everything. You know, people have this view that we're in reality, but then we entertain the idea of imagination. Let's say, somebody is told, okay, remember what you ate yesterday, right? It would be as if, like, remembering a moment is still an abstract event of the mind. Our memories technically don't exist when we have access to them. It's like a person can, let's say their belief can be defined by the content of their memory, but their belief can't be a memory. For the inner realms, let's say we consider, okay, what's happening in our mind. We notice there's a dimension of time, so the mind is whatever it's seeing now. It has an ability to, let's say there's a relationship with the past, there's a relationship with the present, and there's a relationship with the future. So instantaneously we can just see that our inner realms, our mind, gives us access to three ways we can modify reality. One way is to just let it be there. Another, it's as if the mind doesn't do anything. It doesn't need to work to create meaning into the moment. The attention is just present. Like right now when I'm looking at this coffee cup and I'm considering it a coffee cup, that's like my inner realms being in the present. But if I was to look at this coffee cup and remember, or have this coffee cup remind me of coffee cups that I had yesterday, that would be a relationship with the past. If I envision that I've already drank this coffee cup and thrown it away, or if, it would be as if like it would be a relationship with the future. So let's say a way our imagination organizes itself in accordance to time, past, present, future. What else do we find? Aside from time, we find space, and we find geometry, which is shape. So I'll write it here, shape. So this is the ability of the person's mind not to look at something in the present. I'll give you an example. Due to us, or let me say it this way. My body has a shape. If I close my eyes and visualize my body, it would be as if like I see that shape. So in the inner realms, the geometry of the present moment can be seen. Now, what else the mind can do? If I tell the viewers, whoever you are listening to me, if I tell you, imagine like a glowing light blue cube hovering in front of you, like a meter away from you in front of the air, and it's spinning slowly. The mind has an ability to perceive that shape. The mind also has a moving ability, right? So you can look at something that isn't moving and the mind moves it. And think of it this way: how many human beings on this planet, they have been, let's say, shackled by circumstance, and they haven't been free, and their mind has visualized freedom, right? So the mind is actually moving geometry. The power of the mind is to move shape. Now, at the same time, of the mind, there is an attention. The secrets of consciousness is how attention is keeping the moment or being the moment. Right now, it's like, what am I doing with this talk? I'm like this being. I'm like this human being, and it's like the past is an archive of geometrical shapes I've seen. The future is the potential of these geometric shapes, and the present is how these shapes have come to be now. The way I see reality is that it's free imagination. So if a person doesn't know what's going to happen in the future and they imagine it, they may see something, right? It's as if they would have to imagine the future, but the present, the thing about reality, it's like it's imagined before we got here. If we are creatures of mind, and if the universe is also a mind, we would be in some sense the imagination of the cosmos, or the imagination of a universal intelligence. And I remember giving this talk, Are We the Imagination of God? The human being is alone in so many ways in the world that it keeps itself company with archetypes. It's like there comes this question that if a human being lives life properly, why would they have a need for memories? Imagine the mind was living so perfectly. Imagine a perfect mind, and it was living so perfectly that it didn't have to consider its past anymore. The inner realms is a space where we access differentiations and variations of reality. This is the best way to say it. Now, I've had moments where some moments it's as if the attention knows what's coming, and some moments the attention doesn't know. It's just like a surprise. There has been moments where I've gone for walks, and in my inner realms, I've envisioned a scene from a future, which usually I put them in my science fiction. What do we do as a person that has a mind that brings forth different variations of the person? How can we be just an image of ourselves when our mind is managing multiple images of ourselves? That means it's kind of hilarious. It's like if the mind is filled with inner realm content of images, sound, sensory perception, what is aware all of this content is there, right? It's like something that is not an image has access to a lot of images, and therefore it can choose to be an image in a different space. Our consciousness exists through the separation of the self with the world, and that's when, in some sense, two rooms began to happen. We are living in more than one dimension, and hence the mind can move in ways the body can't. I've had the privilege of speaking to some people who had full certainty of their past lives, like the person was in it was like Tokyo Harbor somewhere, and they remember just way the geometry of the building, like the buildings were that the buildings weren't when they were there, and it was as if whose memory was let's say a hidden truth. Imagine simultaneously, as we are living as a physical being in front of our eyes, we are simultaneously living as a field of intelligence that has access to all the content of our mind. There was this genius by the name of Daniel Talbot, I think, and I remember he wrote a book. I bought the book and read it, and this guy was a person who had memorized 10,000 digits of pi. So pi is like 3.14, that ratio, he had managed to memorize 10,000 digited number, imagine. Right, he had managed to memorize it, and in his book he was explaining how he had done it, right? And the way he had done it was that his mind automatically would give qualities to the numbers. So when he was reading 3.14, when he was reading the number, his mind was envisioning a sort of height and spaciousness. It was as if his mind was looking at numerology and translating it in a world to a world, right? As if the mind was taking something, symbols, and was seeing a world, or seeing them as a world simultaneously, right? And the way this person had managed to accurately remember was that the whole number of pi had become a sort of world, and when he was walking in that world and he would see something, let's say something that was tall in that inner world, it would be like the number 9 or something, right? So it was a way where his mind had managed to translate what it saw in one world into another world, and he managed to close his eyes and consciously experience himself moving in that inner world. This implies that there is another life. It implies that what we see now as us is the tip of an iceberg. You know, so all those people who are like, in my past life I was Buddha, it's like you're looking at the past life of the tip of an iceberg, but the unconscious remains. And it's like this is where the species has to consider how brave of creatures we will be in the void. Should we fear the multidimensional and just bunker down in a singular definition of reality, or should we realize that by the nature of being multidimensional experiences are birthright? You know, poetically, it's the birthright of consciousness. A psychologist, explained memory, I read this years ago, explained memory in a unique way, and the person was like, imagine there's a cube of jello, okay, so imagine a cube of jello, and he said, imagine you take a spoon and you put boiling hot ink and you pour that ink on this cubic jello, and the boiling ink makes a sort of dent on the surface of the jello. If you pour the boiling ink, another spoon of the boiling ink over this jello again, it makes a dent over the dents that have been made. It's another way of saying the mind is tunneling through familiarity. It's a genetical program moving on the surface of the earth, establishing a relationship with itself that is not physical. In this non-physical relationship, its mind and awareness appears as space, and the space where reality is in. Once there is a certainty of the space, and this is very bizarre what I'm saying, guys, let me tell you why. Because the nature of the space of the mind is androgynous. It is attributeless. We look at a biological body and we could be like, okay, this is a male body, that's a female body, but when you look at the space of the mind, how can awareness, be given the attribute of a shape? Who are we before the effort of our energy manifests? We are the potential witness of variations of how reality can happen. So coming into terms with the unknown witness and the presence of your whole moment as a being is really what mysticism is about. imagine like Sherlock Holmes, but Sherlock Holmes is not trying to figure out, let's say, a crime or something in the outer realms. Imagine Sherlock Holmes wants to solve the problem of like who is experiencing life or what is consciousness, and so it would be as if we would look at it from the general and what the general implies to the specific, and then what the specific implies in the general, right? Pretty much a relationship of how is the unknown moving the known, and how is the known moving the unknown. When it comes to in front of our eyes, the known is moving the unknown in the sense that the person has an identity. It's as if like somebody does something and we're like, who did that? And it's like that person's name is the known identity. It's the owner of that moment's animation. But when it comes to the inner realms, so as an example, it would be like, it's like, it would be this, whoever you are listening to me, for example, I don't know, raise your hands in the air, like actually raise your hands in the air, that would be, and just be conscious you're doing it. Now close your eyes and imagine you're raising your hands in the air, but don't actually raise your hands in the air. That difference, that the mind can move differently than the body, just this realization is enough. Pretty much, if life is a dynamic shape, it's a changing shape. The question is, it's like, okay, what is aware it's changing? And you know what's remarkable? From the beginning of my life, I have experienced my body change. I've experienced my personality change and different views on my character. But something that hasn't changed is the one that has been aware I have been changing. You see, that awareness is your presence. And a person's presence, it's intelligent beyond conditional frameworks. So it's as if the person tried to have beliefs on a multidimensional event only to realize the beliefs were trapped in their own world. And the question comes, why does the human being need to believe in anything when we are an experiential entity? If the human being didn't have a relationship with its future, it wouldn't have an expectation. If it wouldn't have an expectation, there would be no sort of judgment of what is the right thing or the wrong thing to do. Morality exists because man considers a value system, so assigns a value system to the future. What's very funny is that we're creatures that name ourselves and then we celebrate our birthday, right? But the hilarious thing is we say my birthday, right? Or the person says my body, my mind, my soul. It's like, who the WTF is that my who owns the body, mind, and soul? You see, that's when reality is being defined more as an experiential moment rather than an ideological construct spread out in time. Now, somebody, let's say, has mystical experiences and they're like, Mr. Within, I became non-dual. What do I do with this realization that it's like the world is one intelligent presence? The ultimate action, if someone was like, okay, Mr. Within, what's the ultimate action a being can do in reality? Or if somebody says, Mr. Within, what would the most advanced being in conscious manifestation or just in any world or all worlds do? And the answer is that if you are truly advanced, the advancement is there, so trust is the only thing that remains. Human beings, they have an attitude where they are trusting the known, and when they trust the known, they can access it. So a person who shapes are real for them, they can use them, right? Or think of it this way: somebody who looks at a paintbrush and the paintbrush exists to them and is real, then they're like, okay, I'm gonna grab this paintbrush and draw something, right? They can use it, right? But I shouldn't say strange, but I think where the species has come to now is that we have trusted the known, and the known has turned into a spectrum, and it has turned into a three-way vision of time. But the most advanced thing the known entity can do is to trust the unknown. And when you trust the unknown, the person's no longer using the mind to find truth, but rather being the witness of how the mind is moving at all, right? So instead of the person being like, let's say for example, the person wants to know a past life and they're like, who was I in my past life? Okay, imagine somebody has that curiosity, right? And they're wondering about who was I in a past life, and then, I don't know, let's say a thought comes up to them, I don't know, they were Buddha or something, you know. And so the person's like, yeah, I was Buddha, you know. But then imagine someone not even thinking about a past life, not even thinking about trying to find a specific shape that meets an expectation, just being in the moment. Imagine you're going about your day, or you're going on a walk in the park and you suddenly trip, and before you trip, you somehow, like, your reflexes work and you stop yourself from falling. And the moment you do that, a part of you looks at your body and it's like, wait a minute, how did my personality know to animate in such a way, right? And what I have realized is that they talk about, think of it this way: there's a objective dimension, physical dimension, and there's a subjective dimension, okay? And there's also an emotional dimension, and something that is superior in force. So imagine right now I'm still trying to get the species to consider its inner realms and realize that the mysteries of reality are beyond the definitions we have accepted for reality. That is the power of true mysticism. It is the archaic revival of the unknown intelligence to itself in a world that the world was telling it what it is. It's as if the unknown is nameless. See, we are a nameless unknown force for now moving the shape that is the effort of the human species. There has been times where I have felt that my inner realms have resembled memories, but all those memories were related, like memories from different lives. I mean, right? There was a moment where I thought that it was as if I felt I had this memory of being one of the fields of sight, for example, through the eyes of Rishi Vyasa. Okay, you know what it is? It's as if, like, imagine there's some drops. We have the relationship of a drop, a river, and an ocean, okay? And imagine there's a drop that wants to know its past life. You know, it's like, I'm this type of drop in this life. What kind of drop of water was I in my last life, right? And then there are some who they have become a river, and they are not just looking for their last life, they are looking for their last world. And so it's as if, like, what would the past life of a drop of water be? What would the past life of a river be? And what would the past life of an ocean be? You see? The whole point, I find, that the whole point of human intelligence and the mystery of consciousness, leading to the presence of the attributeless witness that is aware of it all, the reason there are unknown variables in man's conscious view is so that he never becomes convinced by what he is, because it's a process of becoming. Do you know, it's as if like the person's like, okay, I didn't exist, now I exist, and now where is this existence going if nothing existed? Do you know? So it's as if it's the retaliation of the soul, right? It's as if people are trying to debunk the idea of the soul, not realizing it's that one archetype that will keep humanity sane. That means it's like, this is really poetic, because it's like the idea of the soul is a guardian angel to the sanity of all the secular societies and reality. Because when the question comes, what is here and what is moving here, if we are not capable in acknowledging how our intelligence, what is looking through our eyes, is unknown. Dear viewers, this is true spirituality. That means something is happening that no story can shape. It's like a person's like, how do I define the definition of invisibility as a physical being? You know, sometimes I think like, what of value do I have to share with the world? You know, and I realize it's just my familiarity and to some degree experiences with how my mind is moving my body and how the inspiration of the mind. Sorry guys, I'll readjust the microphone, but keep in mind it might get windy. But I think maybe the winds of evolution are poetically, you know, designated to assist these lectures. You know, sometimes I get a feeling, like this might sound a bit rude, but what if nobody knows anything, you know? It's a feeling that at first, you know, I was like, it makes the person uncomfortable because it's like a supreme doubt on the manifestation, right? It's as if the person realizes they have been in a theater. You know, who knew being born is like acting practice? Can you imagine that? The person's like, I signed up for acting school, and you know, the other person says, oh, really? What's the name of the acting school? The person says, being a human being on Earth. You know, that's the acting school. We are incredible actors. It's just that because we have attached ourselves to the dualistic confines of a sort of shaped certainty, we have not developed shape. We have not cultivated our own shapelessness in the moment. You know, I look at the idea of death, you know, and for me, I'm like, okay, what is it that dies? Like, sure, I understand the body dying, right? The body will eventually end, right? And the body's like a film with an ending. And based on how conscious the director is, suggests the type of ending. So the body, I'm like, okay, the body's gonna be like, see ya, and just go back to the periodic table. These atoms that are under the ownership of my name, it's as if, sure, upon the physical transition, there's no physicality. So it's like the person is renting the periodic table to be a physical being. So I could see me as an object not existing, right? But when I think about How am I being a subject? Like right now, my mind is not an object to me. And so if the breaking of an object is death, something that is not an object, how can it die? How can the awareness of sight die? Right? So that's the bizarre thing. And it's like, let's say it's a coin flip, the person doesn't know. If it's nothing, or let's say it's eternal, man. Like, I've heard a lot of accounts. I mean, of course, this is from YouTube videos I've seen, right? But some people say that when the person's body dies, their mind was dependent on the shape of the body, so their mind still exists. So let's say somebody, in their mind, they think they perceive themselves like Superman, right? And in the outer realms, they're not Superman. So it would be as if when the person's body transitions, when they transition beyond life, beyond physical life or the conscious waking state, what it is it's a shift in the texture of how reality held its composure. So it would be as if the idea, the inner realm version of them as Superman would exist, right? But their body wouldn't exist. And you know what's fascinating? This is one of the coolest things, and one of the I see it as a sort of divine clue and mystery, that why is consciousness starting from first person point of view? Why are we creatures that cannot see our face? And it's like, if somebody's like, man, what was my experience as a human being like? It was like a first person view where you saw your hands and legs, but you couldn't see your face. You know, sure, there's mirrors and whatnot, but I'm saying the way it's biologically designed, the way our intelligence is set up, is for us to look outside of our face. We are looking through our face. We don't have faces on some level, you know. And somebody would be like, Mr.Within, this is some Game of Thrones, Arya, Bravosi shit, you know. But in reality, that's how far the mystery can go. What can intelligence do? It accesses sight, which is information. It, out of the information, it cherry picks what it finds real. I don't know. I feel that the story that has been governing the human species needs to update with the context of a multidimensional being. I ask myself, you know, I've had the privilege of being born in a theocratical society and then being raised in a democratic society. And I could tell you, I have wondered what would be a common denominator in the visions of, let's say, the religiously minded and the secular minded. I wondered about, okay, what is the commonality of it? Because technically, we're all being considered as human beings. Biologically, we are members of the species. It's like a membership that you can't opt out of as long as you're being a biological human being. It's like the pride of the species is connected to you. What that means is, like, we're on a ship, okay? So imagine there's a ship with in unknown waters, and this ship has 8 billion people on it. And let's say the ship is vertical and so long that one end of it can't see the other end. And imagine at the end of the ship, there is a hole. Like the ship is sinking. Okay, and some people are shouting, you know, some people are trying to run to the top of the sinking ship, and others are like, no way, this has to be handled, right? But the idea is that the captain at the front of the ship doesn't know what's going on at the back of the ship. And imagine suddenly the message comes through that the human species is deteriorating through dishonesty and corruption. At the same time, it has an incredible potential that should never be touched by anything inferior. It's the superior presence of us being the conscious physical movers of reality. We are the ones that are alive now. We are the live stream of the universe. You know? The live stream. I don't know. I've known what I feel may happen potentially, at least in my experience, after death, is that it's like my body is living a singular life, my mind is living multiple parallel lives at the same time, and if the attention is no longer centered around one part of itself, it becomes aware of the other parts. So being alive is like a limited time opportunity to advance a species that we actually, the deepest part of our intelligence never was. We are the space where the world is happening in, and this is the actuality of the Atman. If somebody's like, okay, Mr. Within, you're acting like a spiritual person, so what is your experience of your soul? If somebody asks me this, okay, it would be moments where my body was just following the vision of my mind, but the vision of my mind attained uncertainty. So uncertainty in the body is kind of like shyness, at least in the inner realms there is a certain level of certainty, right? But imagine a sort of shyness of mind wanting to even put an effort in being a manifest. The experience I've had with my own soul was moments where it was as if, this might sound hilarious, but it was as if my ego shut up. My ego I stopped being a person for one moment, and it was as if I discovered the fragility of how attention is holding on to any shape at all. And the way I experienced my soul, if I can say that, was that it was as if suddenly in the moment I felt a presence, and this presence instantaneously, imagine a general entering a barracks or something, and suddenly the commanding officers are saluting and the soldiers are saluting, and it's as if there was an intense moment where my body and mind began in some sense acted like servants of my soul. And that moment was the best, the only words I can tell you to explain it. It was as if my soul entered the moment and there was complete freeze, like as if a video game was set on pause. I felt a paralysis, and then I felt as if the soul was giving a command like, at ease, soldier, and it was as if the body relaxed, the mind relaxed, and it was as if an intense framework to hold until the feeling, how do I tell you, it's like an emotional certainty. Spiritual experiences are like that, And it's really, think of it this way, the mind acts like a god until it actually notices God. It's like, this is why they would say the mind is a trickster. It's another way of saying desire. Desire makes us act like gods, but the moment the desires are not fulfilled, there comes a humility for the mind. Okay, so it's literally the composure of the mind. If it's desire bound, its individualism is giving meaning to the collective. If the desires are gone, it's the collective that is being the meaning of anything the individual can do. I don't know why, but there's been honest with you viewers, there's been moments where I have just, my eyes have been open in the moment, and I'm like, okay, who am I? What am I even doing existing? There's been moments like that. I've wondered, okay, why is the attention here? And then I noticed that in order to respond to that condition, my mind had to see what it had access to. And the thing that at least what I've noticed my mind has access to, it has an access in noticing how geometry is happening, and then using that geometrical momentum to see so many different variations of reality. It's like the body's promised one life was owed one life, and the mind was owed many lives, And imagine a person, instead of living like endless reincarnations, they lived one life with all the lives existing in parallel. That means a parallel, let's say, state of mind would be as if, like, right now I'm being my body, I am being the idea of myself. But I am simultaneously being a universal being. As a podcaster, the universe talking to itself, who knows? But it could be. In the presence of one's universal self, the fears of the individual do not make sense once your attention has discovered its own nature superior to any memory. It's as if, like, imagine the species, the intelligence of the mind was holding on to images and information, and suddenly some event arose where it couldn't hold on to the information, and it had to it realized that life was about cultivating not knowledge, but how we use knowledge to realize we are actually in the unknown. There's a type of spiritualism where you discover an unknown self, and that's kind of like leads to certain spiritual, let's say, in quotations, experiences. And then there is a way where you discover something else about the world, right? It was as if you were so convinced inside the room of a cosmic mansion that you only had access to one room. It's as if the acceptance of the first waves of meaning. It takes a very advanced being, I find personally, to be able to watch life without being it. That's an advanced state. And people are going to be like, there's no purpose in that state, I'm not an idea. What do I do when I'm not an idea? That's the point, because all actions that were, let's say, coordinated through an ideological self, it's as if we are wondering about who was the individual before it was individual. We're discovering the presence of energy, kind of like not being able to be created or destroyed. It's another way of saying we have unchanging sight or an unchanging awareness to change. And so if we are unknown first, it's like your whole life you've been trying to live in a known way with known certainty, known confidence, right? But then you suddenly realize you have simultaneously been this whole time an unknown being, and due to ignoring it, that's why even the concept of spirituality exists. If we were truly spiritual beings, we wouldn't need the idea of spirituality. Do you see? It's like an enlightened being does not think about enlightenment because it has become second nature. It's as if it's the actual realization of one's second nature. First nature, physical reaction of an animal in a rock. Second nature being the certainty of how the mind knows how to walk. Like, this is the cool thing about the human intelligence. Or you look at I'll say it in contrast to, you look at a baby deer being born, okay, and the baby deer already knows how to walk. The mother doesn't have to teach the baby deer how to walk. Genetically, it's like its intelligence is active. Now, for the human being is born, but the parents of the human being have to teach the human being how to walk, right? But this is my argument. They something that we didn't need to be taught was how consciousness moves the moment. I am telling you, movement, the ability to move in a space of attention is naturally known. It's as if it's to be a conscious being is like, post the requirement of a certainty of being before shape. When I think about the future, it is not a future that is so afraid of reality that it has to just accept one side of the coin. To me, it's like, I understand there's good and evil actions that happen on the planet. There's, let's say, good and evil people. Sure, I get all of that. But I ask myself, for how long is a species going to just idolize one side of a coin when there is two sides to the coin? It's as if trying to analyze reality, but then realizing creativity is the exploration beyond limit. Alright guys, as a quick sort of breather, I'm going to just look at the chat section, focus on that for a little bit. Welcome everyone. Somebody in the chat section says, are we our own heroes if it's our story? What is a hero? Are you seeing hero as an idea? Are you seeing heroism to the body? Are you seeing a heroic mind as a heroic archetype? Or do you acknowledge the heroic spirit? A way energy is that is in some sense as if, think of it this way, infinite energy cannot be denied. Animation. You see, it's like to have a heroic, I'll say this, there's been moments where physically I looked at myself and I felt like a coward. Okay? There's been moments where intellectually I've been trying to solve a problem of my perception and I've felt fear. There's been times where I've thought about things where I've okay, did I enter the forbidden collective mind, or am I still in the authorized domains of the collective mind? Right? But the only thing I've managed to feel, to allow for, let's say, courage to flow through me in regard to is really the nature of my attention. As much as right now I am certain that I am a biological and physical entity, I'm also certain that the awareness to all the information in the moment is being the whole moment simultaneously. So it's as if, hilariously, the problems of the body are solved through the intelligence that is the mind, and the problems of the intelligence of the mind is solved by the attributeless witness that is then pretty much the intelligence of the soul. To be a hero of your own life means to be a champion of the weak. So imagine somebody wanted to be their own Robin Hood, their own superhero. It would be as if they have to see what part of their intelligence can restore the rest. There is a randomity to life, which is as bizarre as just the first person perspective of it. We are all it's like there's 8 billion consciousness sitting at a poker table, and every person has been given cards, right? So it's another way of saying that every person is a sort of torch their ancestors passed on to existing future generations. Our ancestors, those who are living in here who can hear me now, our ancestors booked us the flight of existing in this generation. And Mr.Within is saying, you who have felt like a passenger your whole life, Humorously, when you become selfless, you begin to give a chance to the moment to move as yourself. So it's as if when our attachment to an individual format, or let's say when we let go of our attachment to an individual format, where we stop judging an individual as ourselves as if it's just good and bad for how duality spiral, it's as if the person's like, what if I was here before duality was? What if before there was a self in the world, there was intelligence? And it's as if the only thing that I find human beings can consider was here before anything else was space. Space is like poetically a metaphor for God, because where is the world happening? So intelligent space is technically another way of saying an inconceivable God, for space is not conceivable. It is the absence of conception. Anybody who feels they are, let's say, trapped in a simulation, I was talking about this earlier, in the previous episode, anybody who's, let's say, trapped in a simulation, in order for the simulation to exist, the simulation has to be a contrast to the original. Therefore, the original is the space where the simulation is existing. Therefore, the simulation never is there. Someone in the chat section says your view on God. I would say, timeless, inconceivable moment that knows its being. That means if we were identifying what is the smartest being in the universal sector, all the beings that are doing things, they're still found in a space. God to me, it would be like poetically, in whose mind am I existing in? How have the laws of nature dared to sculpt my reality? Or in some sense, why have they? You see, the question of why is divine, right? Because it takes man to a position where he cannot rely on just what he knows so far. We have to shift the mind of the species into explorers of the mysteries of the realm, right? Because really what God is the potential of reality, and it's like the inconceivable future, which is in an inconceivable space. So I would say maybe in one way I would define God as the intelligence of an intelligent, or here it would be like an inconceivable space remembering itself to an inconceivable future. Because something very profound about religious ideology is that it doesn't say you are just a human being. It's like Adam and Eve are not just Adam and Eve. What their soul is from the Abrahamic context is that God imbued his breath, and he made something out of clay, imbued it with its own life. Right? The soul is God's life within us. Or how we are being God's life. So we are a soul in the framework in a humanized framework. We are an unknown attention in the human framework. Now, any ideal person has the relationships seem to be self-supporting. There's truths of one's own mind, and there's truths that were never in one's mind. So imagine you live such an advanced life that you realize you are not in your mind. And you're like, whoa, I'm not a body, I'm not a mind, I'm not an object, I'm not a subject, what am I? And that's the challenge of the species, to revert to an originally unknown moment, to be capable and seeing in new potential that will be set situations where at some point I was having a cigarette, right, and there was somebody, and the conversation got deep, and the way I explained a view I have on God, where I'm like, it's like, why should there be anything moving at all? And so the movement, so that which is moving everything, is in some sense like, what else can be a crown? It's like God is like the king of the world, but the king is actually being the king. Because you know what's bizarre? Certain ideas in science, I feel they are rooting back to religion. They're subconsciously have religious geometry. Imagine, perceiving God as a sort of king, a sort of authority, and the king has laws for its kingdom. And so it's like human beings fathoming, laws to the universe, right? It's kind of like, okay, it's like creating a reality where the archetype of the, let's say, inconceivable universal king can be positioned. I would say a healthy view on God would be the potential of life. I don't know if people know this, but in certain religions, a name for God is like the greatest. Like literally the word, the greatest, that's one of the names given to God in some religions. So, greatness. Can you imagine they ask someone, what do you believe in? And the person's like, I believe in greatnessism. What is greatnessism? And the person's like, everything's great, everything's being done by something great, even the failure, everything is great. All the dimensions of reality are great. Because the mind has an ability to fathom it, I don't know who it was who said it, but it was this idea that some people think failure is failure, others feel that failure, especially in a mystical context, they feel failure is an initiation to be worthy soon of the success. Right, so it's as if somebody trying something and somebody not doing anything at all. In the context of failure, it's as if somebody who has done nothing at all has already failed. Right, and somebody who tries something and fails, they have at least taken a step to associate with the reality of the success they're looking for. True mysticism is realizing, like, let's say you're a pet owner or you're someone who's riding a horse, right? Or imagine you're riding a vehicle, a car, and then you realize it's not a car, it's a 1 horsepower vehicle, it's a horse you're riding. Right? So it would be as if you suddenly realize the inanimate world you have been living in is alive, and its life vibrates in accordance to your own mind. Right? Because in the purest level, it's as if we were to say, what's the common denominator of conscious entities in this world, in the universal sector? It would really be that there is some force that's being known. Right? Some force is being me right now, that I'm capable of speaking. Now the question is like, okay, what are the mysteries that surround this force? So the mysteries of this force go to a point where if it's beyond an object and subject, I can't use language. That means there is a level of inquiry where I would say either subconsciously dived into it and then later on realized like this is a danger, let's say, of non-dualism is the forgetting of the humanized qualities of the individual. That means if a person is in a dehumanized state for too long, right, whether it's like somebody in a cruel situation being treated in a dehumanized way or somebody who's like a yogi in a mountain meditating for 3 years in a cave, right? Tibetan Buddhist monks meditate for 3 years, 3 months, and 3 days. It would be as if you stay in dehumanized states for too long, like those people who love Star Wars, right? They love the story, get so captured by the story that they identify as a character in the story. And you know what's fascinating? If we were to wonder what kind of character we are in our own story of life, we are a choice among the spectrum of different ways we can be in the world. Right now, me giving this podcast, my mind is, I am experientially moving as a mind first, and then the body's kind of in the passenger seat. Let's say if I was running, my body would be in the driver's seat and my mind would be in the passenger seat. Moments where I get bored or fed up or tired with the edge of my reality. There are moments where it's as if like you're like that. Any effort I make, it's like still a simulation. So it's like some moments the person just stops. A moment reanimates. We idolize individuality, not realizing how many moments throughout the day we're not even perceiving, where the idea of ourselves is not the key thing in our life. It's like who we are has become so second nature that we don't have to think. It's like someone driving for many years, and after some point it's like muscle memory. You know, you don't have to think about driving. Of course, always being conscious of the road, but you don't have to think about driving. It's like you could drive, imagine like a truck driver. You know, there could be this view that instead of we are these incomplete beings that are going through some sort of, let's say, evolution of the soul into a perfection that resembles the closeness similar to God, right? We can have this view that we maybe are such advanced beings that in all other fathomable dimensions of reality, the intelligence that we are has made its mark, and only this parallel version of Earth is left. So imagine Earth had, I don't know, let's say 75,000 parallel universes, parallel versions of Earth. Imagine in all those parallel versions of Earth, we had attained and built advanced civilization. Only this parallel universe had been left, and it would be as if all worlds, are in some sense watching this world to see if the finale, if the cherry on the top of manifestation is placed. If an advanced civilization emerges here, it would be a victory of all beings in the universal sector, something that, in movies it's depicted that extraterrestrials or, aliens or whatever, like there's forces that are against humanity, right? But let me tell you here, the human experience is so rare and unique. It's as if we are a light in an inanimate dark room. We are the animation of light. We are the destiny of light in our eyes. Something that snaps a person out of any illusion or simulation they are in is I would say, an experiential emergency. Or let's say an existential emergency. It's like human beings right now, let's say, what was it? It was the World Health Organization. It was saying like that as there's more people, it's like shot to try to wonder about if your most advanced state of being was already here, how would you already be acquainted with it? This is not on an egoic level. You see, it's as if it's kind of bizarre, but like the best way to design and enter the future is by not being in the future. A timeless being would have an ability to move through any sort of time, right? Activate the advanced potential of the human being means that every human being has to wonder about the most advanced state. That's it. The meditation for the future generations is conscious advancement. That's it. What else can we want? Life is like, you look at the past and it's like a photo album. You look at the present and it's like a photograph, where it's like a painting you're drawing. And you look at the future, and the future is kind of like how our paintings become the art gallery where new artists arrive. Reestablishing a collective honor of every human being on the planet, for a moment stepping out of their inner realms, for a moment forgetting who they are and remembering what their species is. That is the, I would say, greatest form of love, and it's smartest strategy, because the person is like, as long as there's losers, it's like winners have, in some sense, dissension probability. So the idea becomes, what is the best win-win strategy? And the best win-win strategy is a species that is content and capable of being physically, being objectively individual, objectively collective, and then internally individual and internally collective. That means, imagine these four states were mastered, and suddenly, there would be a glow in the eyes of human beings. We would become the glowing ones. That's really what an advanced civilization is. It's as if it's the same human beings, but there is a different glow around them, and it's the glow of a sort of certainty that we are not here to serve the past. And even though we may think we're here to serve the present, with the present service is for the future. We are living for the future that poetically will be our continuity. And their life is like, I'm surprised not everybody is freaked out. I'm overwhelmed with existence. But at the same time, I use humor to dissolve the attachment to the suffering. It's as if it's kind of like your ego becomes too simple for the complex world to burden. When you can be a simple being in the moment, that is really when you are most conscious of how complex intelligence is happening. From the simple to the complex, back to the simple, back to the complex. To play the game of life means to live for the infinite continuity of your species. That means there is no time to be violent. We are trying to keep, get the future here. And so, in this episode where I say in the subtitle, Power of the Mind, whoever you are, you may have relied on external sources for power, right? There's people searching for truth, and they're like, for example, they see a guru and the guru is like, gives them power. But in reality, the power your own mind can release is greater than anything external to you. That means really what the name Mr.Within implies is that it's an unknown attention looking outside. So once you become acquainted with the nature of your attention, imagine your mind is like an instrument that has never existed before, and you only have 100 years to become a master musician. To cultivate the mastery of how your attention moves, because this is what you're left with. Guys, it's so cold that I'm not feeling the cold anymore. An era will come in the future, an era of cyberspace children. Children who their consciousness engages an artificial world before a real one. So, it's as if immortality in cyberspace-based immortality in the future would be as if we do something ingenious, and it would be as if 100 years of the body would be equivalent to 100,000 years of psychological experience in cyberspace. Right? That is the advancement we can get to, because it's all about how much ability we have to hold information as reality. It's like, what is knowledge but, the concluded shape of your eyes. Think of it this way. Imagine a human being puts virtual reality goggles and they forget that they put these virtual reality goggles on, right? And they take that life inside cyberspace so real that they forget they have a life outside of the immediate experience, right? For strangely, I feel dreams have been preparing us for this. Dreams have been a sort of logging out of a server of manifestation. Right, when a person wakes up, you've logged out of the dream. When you sleep, you kind of automatically or subconsciously log into a dream, and suddenly there's a view of it. It's like people who dream, their minds are trying to do so much work that when the body is asleep, the mind is still working for itself. Somebody says in the chat section, what if a mirror is a portal to another dimension? Then it wouldn't be a mirror, it would be a portal. Or let's say in the future there's mirror portals, I don't know, for me what a mirror is like, it's the reflection of my body, but simultaneously a rare moment in nature where I can see my face, and I don't know if people have done this, but 100% people have done this, but there's moments where I've looked into a mirror and I've tried to look into my eyes to get a acquaintance and to discover the nature of my soul. And you know what I've realized? The soul is waiting. Like there's something about our intelligence as our mind being the awareness of the whole moment that it waits, and suddenly in the inner realms idea or vision or an inner event arises, and then the body knows what to do. So if a person becomes selfless and watches how ideas enter and leave the vicinity of their mind space, imagine in the future I've shared this example in other episodes, but imagine in the future, like a child is born, okay, and the doctor, after the child is born, let's say the child is presented in like some sort of advanced technology of this like liquid pod, and its mind is connected to like cyberspace or something. It's in the future, I see like the way technology should interface. The interface of technology with our brain should not be physical; it should be through waves. But right now, we have to put on goggles on our face to go into, let's say, virtual reality. But in the future, it's just going to be like you step into this room and there's like these antennas around you, and it's in a wave way your mind simulates. You know. But anyways, the whole idea of this is that before the child, the doctor goes to the parents in the future and says, okay, how old do you have? What age of an inner maturity do you want for your child? And imagine the parents are like, okay, for 10 years we want our child for let's say 10 years to in some sense experience let's say 100 years of life or something, or let's say 30 years of life, right? So let's say in the outer realms the child is in some cyberspace pod, and it suddenly reaches the age 10, and during that whole time in its mind it was living the life of a 30-year-old, let's say, individual. And so once the life was, let's say, finished, it's like when the time was up, it's like the person woke up from the dream of a cyber life, literally the dream of another life, you know, an otherworldly influence, an other world. One thing we know is that failure is an invitation towards success. You know, it's as if the mind is trying to build a spectrum of that which it is trying to cultivate. And so in order to have a spectrum, it needs to have an archetype of failure, an archetype of success. And usually when you fail, how you failed is kind of showing you how you can succeed. You know, so whoever who has failed, use your failure. Wonder about the meaning. And, you know, a person can close their eyes many times. You know, I've closed my eyes and I've wondered what would it be like to walk on a sky city. You know, what would it be like to see the world below us as no longer suffering. You know, it's like an advanced humanity has an advanced acknowledgement of the human being. An advanced acknowledgement of the human being means an inevitable acknowledgement of multidimensionalism. And so if we begin to be, you know what it is? It's like human beings. I gotta draw this. Okay. So this is what I wanted to draw. We have Civilization 1.0, Civilization 2.0. In Civilization 1.0, there was a dimension of time, right? And it was as if past, present, and then a sort of future, right? This was a sort of, let's say, horizontal view, horizontal Guys, my fingers are freezing. Like, the handwriting's gonna even be. People are gonna look at my handwriting and be like, "Are these, extraterrestrial hieroglyphs? Like, what are?" One day, if an alien reads our, our handwriting, it would be like extraterrestrial hieroglyphs, But anyways, whatever. My whole point is that civilization, the current civilization we're living in, we have an idea of the human being as an individual. This individual is identified in time. Everybody has a past, everybody's present, and everybody's, who's alive has an access to the future. Now, Civilization 2.0, this is where it becomes fascinating, because a vertical dimension opens up. And the vertical dimension is collective, multidimensional. This is gonna be a bit difficult to accurately draw, but it's like here, I'll just simplify it, whatever. So, this is Civilization 2.0, the psychology of human beings, where they realize everything they have believed in has been an act of accepting image for a singular dimension, right? But in reality, to be able to know we are singular means we have to have something that is not singular in contrast. And so there's the void, and then there is, in some sense, the singular reality of existence. There's the duality of the mind. There's the infinitude of the soul. The actual chart would be like this, maybe. There's the dimension of the void. We have the dual, the singular, Sorry guys, I messed this up. There we go. To explain to the viewers what I'm doing here, right? So I'm saying, okay, civilization as the human being has been under this impression I'm this individual being, this individually existing being, right? And in a singular dimension, we are having the vision of the future, right? So it would be as if, like, in a dimension where a creature is going from the past in the present, and then the present's becoming the future, going to the future. So, like a character climbing a mountain, and then it would be as if the nature of our mind. It's like if when the moment we see good and evil being able to be attributed to a character, which is being the consciousness of the individual, right? So that's duality. So it's as if this is how our consciousness is happening right now. The human consciousness is this curly line I've drawn. Okay, moments where there's past and the future, and then moments where you have the timeless and time just being. Time is not a trio. Life is literally happening in this area. There's a way where the mind is capable of taking something that's in duality, a shape, and then wondering about its contrast at such a speed that it eventually leads to infinitude. Right? So it's as if our minds can move shapes at such speeds that we come to an instant contentment in how they're changing so quickly we cannot shape them. You know? That would be the opening to the infinite mind. I would say 400 years from now, we're gonna have infinitists, you know. Like legit, you know, extreme infinitism. Like people are gonna, you know, the rebels of that generation are going to go, like the revolutionaries of that generation are gonna go graffiti on walls like, we're infinite beings, wake up, rather than like, you're a sheep, wake up, you know, to how you're a lion, you know. Anyways, what I'm saying is like this to me is how reality is kind of happening. So right now, in this lifetime, in this conscious waking stage, I have access to my individual life and my dual life. The infinite life seems to be beyond the dimension of duality of the mind. It's kind of like revelations of the soul. And when it comes to the mind-body dual of manifestation, it's like it's literally like our life is sandwiched between the void and the infinite. Human conscious life, okay, dualistic experience. Now, if somebody has contentment, and advanced civilization would be like the full scope of this. that whole square where the civilization, where human beings are comfortable being singular, being dual, being infinite, and being infinite meaning being everything. The void is the only thing left, right? When we unconsciously enter the void, we fear it. No, something bad's happening. But when we consciously enter the void, it's as if that is the most superior state of being. What's fascinating is that man's technique of moving his intelligence is limited to his attitude, and a person's attitude is how they have equipped a sort of energetic release in the moment. If the context of the attitude, let's say we have an honest human being, the honest human being's like, all right, honesty above everything, so let me be truly honest with the dimensions of life, right? And so once that person cares for that true honesty, it's as if in order to see truth, you're required to be true, right? Because if you are not true and then you see truth, then it was as if nobody ever saw truth, because the untruth was there, right? So the mind has to create a sort of space where it is giving permission for the mysteries of the world to be themselves, and is giving it permission for itself to be itself. And it's kind of like, in a cage of bewildered beasts, suddenly like enlightened beings are like stepping out of the caterpillar cocoon of an evolutionary ape, Oh man. We have the person. Or let me say it this way. This is pretty much my technique. What I'm drawing here for the viewers is this is how I have concluded, like I have concluded all my views on intelligence. Like what I'm sharing with the viewers is the most important idea, one of the most important ideas I've ever found on this planet. And this is something where I would say I designed this and I called it the ring of the absent heaven. And it's pretty much the individual human being, once it finds its mind plays with the, let's say, the contrast of something and nothing, right? So the philosopher, imagine, is being wondering not just only how is everything here, but how is there nothing at all, right? So the philosophical mind has a way where it's from nothing and everything, or a single thing view, right? And then once that is covered, this one's like, let's see, it would be like this, So it would be as if you start off as being in a singular dimension of reality, then you experience it in a dualistic dimension of reality, then you realize what is in some sense giving the singular and dual meaning, and it's the void. So pretty much we're human being born as a physical creature, experience a dualistic mind, and then there's the idea of death after 100 years. So like our temporary biological nature means we go experience a moment of what it really means, that's zero, right? So we experience the void. Now, what can happen from the void? The void is where infinity lives. The void is the space where infinity is the potential of its intelligence. So those who experience the void, then they, let's say, come to a perception, a clockwise view of duality. Excuse me. So it's as if the person are here instead of making it like this. So I should. There we go. Okay, there we go. So, pretty much if life was seen in an axis of just 0, 1, 2, infinity being dimensions, okay, dimensions of how reality can move, it's like there are sub-dimensions also, and there's like so this would be as if the human psychology can be seen to be extended into 8 simultaneous parallel lives. Okay, so if we truly wanted to see an advanced human being, it would be like the maintenance of 8 parallel lives that are each capturing a quadrant of reality, possibilities of reality. Anyways, I feel like I should actually write a book on this. And imagine I just keep the same handwriting, and I'm staying true to the viewers. Anyways, guys, that's it. It's getting extremely cold. What else can I say about this giant futuristic orb around the planet? Like, an advanced civilization is just getting to see what the most advanced way of life could be. Human beings, we say, are obsessive creatures. Like most people, their whole life they're obsessed with just their self, But imagine we just asked ourselves, what is the desire of all of our desires? If desires had a king, what would be the king of all desires? Do you know? as if like how far can the vision of wanting anything from reality at all go, right? And so the desire would be to experience an experience that one has never experienced before, but in the spectrum of all the possible experiences, the most advanced. You know, the word advanced, I feel like it's like a word that heals, right? I wouldn't be surprised if in the future there's monks chanting advancement. You know, they'll be like, those monks are monks of an advanced civilization, you know? Who knows, you know? For me, the human effort is like, let's just think about as much as we're trapped in, let's say if we were trapped in 8 simulations of reality, it's like simultaneously that means we have access to 8 simulations of reality. It's like suddenly the emotions of failure and success go away and the person contacts the true geometry of the moment. You know, they say the eyes are the window of the soul. The soul is 100% known. The body's 100%. The soul is 100% unknown. The mind is, the body's 100% known. So it would be as if we are the access point of the unknown to the known, and we are simultaneously an access point of the known with the unknown. Our brains are acting as intermediary conductors of intelligence between the earth and the sky. We are, you know, in ancient mythology they would say Mother Earth and Father Sky, right? Or Father Time. But, you know, let's go with Father Sky. So it would be like the human being, the body is from the earth, the mind is not. Our minds are not behaving like a terrestrial entity because the species is fascinated by flight and trying to like advance beyond its planet. Like our intelligence, it's like acting human until it gets to somewhere where it doesn't need to be human. That means it would be an example where if scientists become robots, you know, literally there may be an era of immortal kind of like that. It's like the whole cyborg context of science fiction. You know, it's all about the ultimate desire of the human being. Imagine right now, whoever that's listening, you attained your ultimate individual desire, everything you wanted as an individual. Imagine you just got. After that moment, try to visualize that moment where you've got everything you've wanted, and then what then? What after you have attained the individual paradise? You will see that it's as if it becomes time for the collective nature to adjust itself with the individual. Right now, being a human being is the individual nature adjusting with the collective. And usually it's done through witnessing inseparability. What if our eyes are actually moving from the future? Are we so convinced by the past? Are we so locked in a framework of time and story that we have not wondered as a species what is our true ability? Like, we don't know. We don't know what the greatest potential of the species would look like. All we know that the species hasn't tried enough. It's as if at some point in history people were like, I don't trust civilization, why should I care for its future? And that's the problem. Human beings should be fascinated, like this is what I find when it comes to political structures. It's as if they need to go to where the fascination of the individual is, not to just robotic perfectionism. The world wants to know if it's truly here, and that is the value of honesty. That is the value of the simplicity of realizing your mind's sight is ancient, but your body's sight is new. The eyes of your eyes are how your whole moment is being here. This is a grace point, a point where the person's like, my whole life I've been looking for everything, but where has everything been? Right? Your eyes become your teacher, and your inner realms move as if you have trusted it enough to watch it. Right? Just like somebody has to trust a horse to ride it. When a human being attains a selfless viewing state where they can trust their moment. When you trust the moment, there's a truly trust the moment, there's a subconscious permission for reality to happen. That means, it's not just people who have trust issues, the species has trust issues when it comes to wondering about its true nature, its true potential. I want to go into a quote tunnel and read some quotes for the viewers before I end off about pretty much Ramana Maharshi. He was like this liberated sage, and there's something about the way he saw life that seemed to be as if he knew what the unknown was. So Ramana Maharshi says, I'm just going to read his quotes. He says, "Let come what comes. Let go what goes, see what remains." Ramana Maharshi says, "No one succeeds without effort. Those who succeed owe their success to perseverance." Ramana Maharshi says, "Who am I? Not the body, because it is decaying. Not the mind, because the brain will decay with the body. Not the personality, nor the emotions, for these also will vanish with death." Sri Ramana Maharshi says, "The degree of freedom from unwanted thoughts and the degree of concentration on a single thought are the measures to gauge spiritual progress." Sri Ramana Maharshi says, "Mind is consciousness which has put on limitations. You are originally unlimited and perfect. Later you take on limitations and become the mind." Sri Ramana Maharshi says, "Like the practice of breath control, meditation on the forms of God, repetition of mantras, food restrictions, etc. are but aids for rendering the mind quiescent." Sri Ramana Maharshi says, "Consciousness is indeed always with us. Everyone knows, in quotations, 'I am!' exclamation point. No one can deny his own being." Sri Ramana Maharshi says, "The mind itself is of the form of all, example of soul, God and world. When it becomes of the form of the self through knowledge, there is release, which is of the nature of Brahman." This is the teaching. Sri Ramana Maharshi says, "Experiences such as, in quotations, 'I went, I came, I was, I did,' come naturally to everyone. From these experiences, does it not appear that the consciousness, in quotations, I, like the letter I, is the subject of those various acts? Inquiry into the true nature of that consciousness and remaining as oneself is the way to understand through inquiry one's true nature." Sri Ramana Maharshi says, "One must realize his self in order to open the store of unalloyed happiness." Sri Ramana Maharshi says, "The best way to meditate is through meditation itself." Sri Ramana Maharshi says, "Self-reform automatically brings about social reform." Ramana Maharshi says, "For those who have obtained unobstructed knowledge of self with a capital S, the world is seen merely as a bondage causing imagination. Shira Maharshi says, the means that make one qualified for inquiry are meditation, yoga, etc. One should gain proficiency in these through graded practice and thus secure a stream of mental modes that is natural and helpful. Yeah, but it's like a person doesn't have to meditate. Let me tell you this. This is my personal view. A person doesn't have to meditate to discover the nature of a truth that's here right now. Right? It's as if like meditation ignorantly would be like a fish who's trying to understand the ocean, just going in a corner of the ocean and just chanting like the mantra, ocean, ocean, ocean. You know, it's like that's not enough to realize it. It requires an honesty where the person realizes in order to see something beyond the limits of their mind, an effort of their mind would still be limited if it was to, like, what I'm trying to say is when it comes to divinity, it's like chess where we're not trying to make the first move, and rather you watch how your mind makes the first move, and it's like in a relationship of how the moment is animate, it's like where there is trust, life can happen. And it's like, you know, some people say I have an imagination or I don't have an imagination. Like some people believe they don't have creativity or imagination. Let me tell you, your imagination is as restricted as what you distrust. So if a person trusts reality, then reality can move in ways in their mind that it's like due to the emotion of the trust, right? If something suddenly happens in the inner realms the person doesn't trust, the body would act like as if it's real and it would freak out. So the nature of it is like if a true spiritual person is like a moment of being that is content with what is happening within it. You know, so it would be as if we climb out of the fear of dualism into a recognition of the various ways that being is placed or positioned. Right now, space is like 0, you know, matter is like 1, consciousness is like 2, and then infinity would be the acceleration of all these, which would be the inconceivable. You know, it's as if it's like the person's like, what do I do after I've realized I'm nothing, you know? It's like the only thing left is infinity. You know, they don't say this, but at the bottom of true failure, it's as if that's where an infinite being remembers itself. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. I'll read one more quote from Maharshi. She says, time is only an idea. There's only the reality, capital R. Whatever you think it is, it looks like that. If you call it time, it is time. If you call it existence, it is existence, and so on. After calling it time, you divide it into days and nights, months, years, hours, minutes, etc. Time is immaterial for the path of knowledge with a capital K. Actually, I'll just keep reading these quotes. Ramana Maharshi says, the self with a capital S is self-luminous without darkness and light, and is the reality which is self-manifest. Therefore, one should not think of it as this or as that. The very thought of thinking will end in bondage. Yeah, he's saying it's like the secret of discovering our true nature is like somebody not touching anything. Imagine you've gone into a museum and you're just looking at something and you're not touching it, right? And if you look at it long enough, you suddenly get a sense that you're in a museum, for example. So similarly, it's like in meditation, there's single pointedness of mind. Zoom in on one component of reality, but concentrate fully on it. And you'll eventually see that you get to see dimensions of it that were not there before, because the nature of the mind is that it's experiencing the body as a journeyer. So in any act of the mind trying to go forth, usually the revelation of journey, or what our intelligence is used to, is worldhood redisplay, right? So it's like worlds we're used to not just language as revelation, we're used to the world in every moment, every new day we live. It's like that's a revelation of how the universe happened, you know. At some point, it's like the expectation for worldhood, it becomes ideologically void. So that the notion becomes like a being that is capable of being in the void, being singular, being dual, and being infinite, right? right, is a being that is capable beyond all these dimensions. Therefore, the journey to the inconceivable is realizing we're being it. That's the unknown nature of attention. Rather than fearing the unknown, our understanding of it means a sort of freedom from the knowledge of the past that had blind spots, like inevitably. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. Wonder about your inner realms, and based on your trust, how you can trust the moment, then reality has been authorized to happen. Wonder about, the simulated Earths, and wonder about the original Earth, and wonder about the original presence of your attention as an intelligent being. Because why are we alive? To get to know what we are. Much blessings and love.